Superstars of Swift, this is Prof G, and in this lesson we're going to improve our interface by showing our star ratings under the title of each review as it's listed in our spot detail view. We'll also compute the average rating value for each spot, and we'll perform a bit more user interface polishing. So stars, let's make that big learning go supernova. Commence the hack! So, Swifters, here's what we had at the end of our last lecture. If we click on a restaurant like Pino's Pizza, we see all of the reviews for that restaurant. These look drab, so we'll spruce up each review row. Now, if you click on a review, we shouldn't be seeing a back button along with cancel and save. In fact, what we want to do is limit the restaurant reviews from being edited unless they're being viewed by the original user who posted that review. Otherwise, we should disable the star ratings as well as the title and review body, and we should only show the back button, not the cancel and save. So this is what we'll have by the end of the lesson. If you select a restaurant, below each review title, we'll show a star rating as well as the first line in the review body. And if a user clicks a review that they've posted, they'll get the ability to update the review. See how we have cancel and save up here, but not the back button. Each element remains interactive. But if we head back and the user clicks a review that they didn't enter, then they'll just see the back button and all of the interactive elements will be disabled and they can't be changed. We'll also post the email address of the person that wrote that review and the date the review was posted. We'll learn some Swifty techniques when updating our UI, so let's get coding. Now, our preview provider isn't showing any restaurant reviews, but we want to add a nicer row for each review that has the review title, and under that, the star rating and the first line of the review. So why don't we create this as a separate view, and then we'll add that view to our spot detail inside the for each statement. So why don't we create a new view under the spot detail view. I'll right click on spot detail view, select new file. This is a Swift UI view, and we'll call this spot review row view. Now this view is going to display data for a review. So we'll create a state variable at state var lowercase r review colon capital R review, but we won't initialize this. We're going to pass in the data from the for each statement of the reviews array in our spot detail view. Then in the body, we'll start with a VStack, and I'll add open and close parens as well as open and close curlies. And in the parens, I want to add an alignment colon argument label followed by the argument dot leading. Then in the curlies, I'll add a text view passing in the review.title, and I'll set the .font property to .title2, and things aren't showing in the live preview because we have to add our declared but uninitialized review variable to the preview provider setup. So down here, I'll backspace over the spot review row view, and as I start to retype it, the option now takes a review parameter. So I'm going to pass in a new review. I'll say capital R review, and this is going to allow me to initialize a new review. And if I start to type the characters for the three parameters that I want to add, I'll start typing title, body, and rating. We see code completion highlights these parameters as well, so when I press return, I get those arguments in the review initializer. So for the title, I'm going to pass in the string, fantastic food. The body will be the string, I love this place so much. The only thing preventing 5 stars is the surly service. And the rating will be the number 4. And now we'll see that live preview works. Now under this, I want to add the star rating and the first line of the review body on the same line, so that implies an H stack, open and close curlies, and I'll call star selection view, passing in the rating $review.rating. Remember, we created that custom view for the user to select the review based on clicking the different stars, but we can also use it here. Now next to this, so under this in our code, we'll write another text view, passing in review.body with the modifiers .font, passing in .callout, and .line limit passing in 1. And we're getting there, but we have a couple of problems. One is that the stars are too big. I'd like them to be smaller. And also, when we're displaying the star ratings for each restaurant review, we don't want the user to be able to click and change those star ratings. They should be view only when they show up as the individual rows of the restaurant's reviews. So we can actually get both of these things to happen by making some very minor changes to our view that we wrote for the stars. So let's head over there now. That's the view star selection view. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the let constant for font to var, making this a variable. Now what that's going to do is it's going to keep the default as .large title font, but we can also pass in a new initializer simply by including the font label, and we can use that to pass in a different font that will supersede the default font. And we'll use this new ability to make our stars smaller when we call this from the spot review row view. And under the binding variable, I'm going to create a new state variable at state var, naming this interactive, and I'm going to set this equal to true by default. So by default, this view is going to be interactive. It's going to allow the user to click on the stars to change the rating. But if we pass in false when initializing this view, then we're going to write some code to disable this interactivity so you won't be able to click on the stars and change the rating. And there are a few ways we can write code for this, but why don't we simply go down here into the on-tap gesture and we'll add a conditional if interactive, open and close curlies, and I'll just cut out the rating equal number and paste them between the curlies. Now this means that if the view was initialized with a false value for interactive, then we won't be able to change the rating by clicking a star. And that's it. So let's head back to Spot Review Row View, and right now we can see the star selection view with its default values. It's still interactive and the display is still in the large title font, but let's change the initializer where we call star selection view. So after the review.rating in here, I'm going to enter comma, and I'm going to start to type interactive, and code completion now knows that this is a variable parameter that I can change. So I'll press return to accept this. It wants a bool, so I'm going to pass in false to turn off the default interactivity. And I'm going to follow this with another comma and type font. So that's another parameter that I can change. And I'm going to enter a new font in here, .callout. And this size looks good, and if I try to click on the stars, they won't change because I set the interactivity to false. Excellent. So now let's head over to our spot detail view and add this view to our for each statement. Remember, we added a to-do that says build a custom cell showing stars, title, and body, so I'll jump to that location using the jump bar in Xcode, and we'll replace the text view with spot review row view, passing in review. And we can build and run in the simulator to test this. We see our lovely spot review row view with its stars and first line of the review, and those stars are not interactive, they're nicely sized. Click a review, we see it. Now up next, we want to improve the interface of this review view. And before we head to the review view, I'd like to start at our review model. So head over to the review file in our model folder, and we're going to make a change. Currently, we set the reviewer's email address with this code, auth.auth.currentuser.email, and we do that in the dictionary, which is invoked just before we save data to Firestore. So I want to change this, and instead we'll set the reviewer as the current user's email address right when a new review struct is created. Then we'll be able to use the fact that a brand new review still has a reviewer's email address assigned before it's saved when we update the review views interface. So highlight and cut this code out here, auth through email, which calculates the value of our reviewer key, and I should have taken the nil coalescing bit, we'll delete that too, and we'll follow the colon after the review key string with the reviewer property. Now that refers to this value up here, so I'll backspace over the empty string, paste in the code that we just cut, and we'll add some nil coalescing after this since it could possibly return a nil, although we should never see that. We'll just say double question mark followed by empty string. And with that done, we're ready to update our review view, so let's head over there now. So in the code we're about to write, we're going to want to compare the current user with the reviewer property of our review. That's the one we just modified so that it has the email of the reviewer who posted it. And since we're going to want to get the current user and their email, that's in the auth object, and that's in the Firebase library, so we need to import Firebase. And then down here, I'll create a new state variable at state var posted by this user, and I'll set this equal to false. So by default, we'll assume that a review that we're looking at was not posted by the current user. Since this will usually be the case, usually you'll be looking at reviews that you didn't write yourself. And I like to have my state objects above my state variables, so I'm just going to cut this out and move it up just for the organization that I prefer. And then we're going to add an onAppear modifier to the vstack so that we can check right away an update posted by this user if the review is one that the current user should be able to edit. So I'll code fold the vstack so that I can find its end, and I'll add .onAppear, and in between the curlies, if review.reviewer double equals auth, capital A, dot lowercase auth, open and close parens, dot current user dot email, open and close curlies. Then in between the curlies, we set posted by this user to true. So even if this is a brand new review, because of the update we made in review, we'll now be able to see that this is a new review, but it's being created by the current user. Or if the user is revisiting an existing review that they posted themselves, we'll also set this flag to true. So now let's use this value. If the user is looking at a review they didn't post, so if the variable posted by this user is false, then let's disable the ability to change the review. So we can disable the stars by finding the H stack with the stars selected view in it, and under that we'll add .disabled, passing in not, exclamation point, be sure that you add that in there, posted by this user, and I'll add a comment that says disable if not posted by this user. And I like to offer a visual cue that the user can't click these values. So we have a border around everything that the user can interact with, but we can remove that border conditionally down here in the overlay. And we haven't done this yet, but we'll eventually change click to rate when looking at a review that you can't change, so that it instead shows the posting user's email and the date the review was made. So we'll change this literal value to, in line with here, to a ternary operator. Posted by this user, $2, :0. This means that if the review is posted by this user, then we'll show a borderline width of 2. Otherwise, if not, we'll set the borderline width to 0, meaning no border is going to show. And then down here with the text fields, we'll make some changes here too. And when developing this lesson, I noticed that there was a slight difference between the text fields if it had a rounded border style like the top one, and it didn't have one like the one below. And we didn't use a rounded border style on the review body down below because the rounded border style doesn't expand to fill up the space like our overlay does. If we included the rounded border style in the body text field, we'd actually see a faint line under the first line that would slowly expand downward as we typed new lines. That's not the look we want. Also, when we disable text fields, if we use the rounded border style like we do above, we see a faint gray inside the text field, but we won't see that below when not using the rounded border style. So instead of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the text field style above, and I'm going to use the manual padding and the overlay that I use below on the top text field as well. So I'm going to grab this padding horizontal 6 line down here, copy it, and paste it over the text field style modifier in the text field above, so that'll keep these two fields with a similar interface when disabled. Then I'll change line width to 2 to the conditional change the same way that I did it before. I'm going to say posted by user $2, and here, instead of putting in a 0, I'm going to put in a 0.3. So that'll create a very faint line, but I like the look of this. I think it makes the interface convey that these two elements are disabled. If you'd like to change this and go back to 0 or make other mods on your own, feel free to. And I also need to do this down below to the other text field, so I'm going to highlight this ternary function here and paste it over the 2 in the line width in the body's text field. And we're actually seeing what the updates look like in live preview if the review isn't posted by the user, so we get no line around the stars, and we get the much faded or disabled looking outline around the review title and the review. Nice! Now I also want to make sure that I disable these two text fields, but they're both in a V stack, so I can disable just below the closing curly in this innermost V stack here. So I'll add .disabled, and again pass in exclamation point, posted by this user. So this V stack will be disabled if the review was not posted by this user. So now let's build and run and test this out, but make sure before you do this that you've added a second user and that you've got at least one review posted by each user. This is going to let you check out the interface to see what it looks like when you're looking at a review that was posted by the current user versus looking at someone else's review. So you can see I've got 2 users in my authentication area of this app's Firebase console. I use the app's sign up function to sign up as both of these users. And to prep this, if we take a look at the Firestore database, I've already created reviews in Pino's Pizza. I can see Get the Sicilian is posted by the email a@bc.edu, while the review But Just Okay is posted by john.gallagher@bc.edu, which is not a true review because I love Pino's. So let's head back over to our app and try out the changes that we made to the interface and be sure they're updating according to who's viewing the review. So I'm going to sign out and I'm going to sign back in as a@bc.edu. So when I'm signed in as this user, I'm going to take a look at the first Pino's review that was posted by this user, and we see it's fully interactive. We can make changes, and we can save this, although curiously, the display isn't updating when the change to the individual review was made. Those stars weren't updating. We'll explore how to do that in a future lesson, but I'll click back, and I can definitely see that we did indeed update our reviews. But now let's click on this other review, But Just Okay, in my app, and that was not posted by this user. It was posted by john.gallagher, so we can see the stars are not interactive and there's no rectangle border around them. Now it does say click to rate, and we want to remove that, and in fact we'll replace it with the reviewer's email and the date that it was posted on. but I also can't click in my two text fields. We have those properly disabled. We see the faint outline around the text fields, so they look disabled as well. Now we also want to make changes to the toolbar so that when looking at a review that's not yours, we should only see the back button. Otherwise, the back button should be hidden, and we should see the cancel and save buttons. So let's head back to our review view and make those changes. So back in our review view, after the .onAppear closing curly and above .toolbar, we'll add the modifier .navigation backbar hidden, and we'll pass in posted by this user. And I'll follow this with a comment, hide back button if posted by this user. Now let's update the toolbar based on whether the user posted the review we're looking at. So inside the .toolbar modifier, we'll add a new conditional, if posted by this user, open and close curlies. Then I'll highlight and select both of these toolbar items. Make sure you select it through the appropriate closing curly. I'll cut this out, then paste it between the if posted by this user conditional curlies. So now we can build and run. Hammer time! No errors. And if I click on Pino's Pizza and look at its hip to be square, this user posted this review, so we see just cancel and save, no back button. But if we cancel and then click on Prof G's review, we see the back button is not hidden because this review was not posted by this user, and we are not showing the cancel and save buttons. Nice. Now, the one thing we'd like to change is, if this is a review we can't modify because it was entered by someone else, we should show the email address of who entered the review and the date the review was posted on. But if we look at a review posted by the current user, we should show the string click to rate in here. So let's head back to the review view, and I'm going to create a string to hold the value click to rate, so we can change this to the poster's email and the date it was posted on. So I'll add @state_var, and I'll call this, and since I'm not passing values into these two variables, I actually should have put private in front of them. That'd just prevent the variables from showing up in other files in code completion, but there won't be any problem with that. And set this equal to click to rate, initially. And I'll add a comment after this that says, otherwise, we'll say poster email and date. Then let's change this new variable if we need to. We do that down in onAppear, and this if condition is true if the reviewer is looking at a review that was posted by that user. But now let's add an else clause to this if statement. And in the else clause curlies, we'll set rate or reviewer string equal to the string by space string interp, and in the string interp we'll pass in review.reviewer. Then back up in the text field that has click to rate, we'll replace this literal string with rate or review string. And I also want to conditionally shrink the font if we're posting the reviewer and the date. So below this, we'll change font.title2 to a ternary operator that says posted by this user, ?.title2, .subheadline. And in the bold parentheses, we'll also pass in posted by this user, so that we'll only bold if it was posted by this user, and click to rate is in here. And we'll also set minimum scale factor to 0.5 and the line limit to 1, and let's add some horizontal padding just in case we need it. Now, we're not passing in the user and the date into the preview provider, but to test this action, we can build and run in the simulator. So we'll click on Pino's and click the Prof G review that wasn't posted by the current user, and I see the John Gallagher email address in the string above the stars. But if we go back and look at a review that was posted by this user, we see click to rate in a larger bold font. Nice! Now I'd also like to add the date that the review was posted on next to the posted user's email, so let's change that. So we'll head back to onAppear, and in the else clause where we add the user's email, remember that's down in our onAppear modifier, just above this, let's create a constant to hold the properly formatted date. And to do this, we're going to say let review posted on equals, setting that equal to review.postedon. And start to type in formatted. And when we do this, we see several options for formatting dates. Let's select this one that has formatted and accepts a date and time parameter, and press return to accept this. Now remember, an Apple date is both date and time, and if I type a period into the date field, I can see that I've got a bunch of different options that I can select from. Complete, long, abbreviated. I'm going to select numeric. This will express the date in all numerals based on the calendar preferences of your device. So since my devices use US calendar preferences, my date will show as the numbers for month/day/year. Most of the rest of the world shows as day/month/year. And SwiftUI and the operating system work together to automatically format this according to the preferences on your device. Then we can tab over to time, and since I don't want to show the time for the review, only the date it was posted on, I'm going to enter .omitted so that no time shows up. Then, in the rate or review string below this line, I'll just add the following to the string. Space, on colon space string interp, and in that string interp, I'll pass in review posted on. And this value will be passed up to our text view where rate or review string shows. No need to change that up there. And now if we build and run and select a review that wasn't posted by the current user, we see the posting user's email and the date. Very nice. And if we head back and look at a review that this user did post, they have the option of being able to update this. It says click to rate. Good work. And I've got a jump cut in here. There's just one more thing I'd like to do to finish out this lesson. Let's update our average rating so that we get a true value in here. Right now, we just got a placeholder literal string of 4.5. So to do this, start out in your spot detail view. I'm going to add this average rating computed property below our state variables. Now, this is not a state variable. It's just a var because computed properties can't be state variables. So we'll say var avg rating :string. Remember, we need to indicate the type for the computed property. Then inside open and close curlies, we'll calculate what the string should be and return that value. So first, let's make sure that we don't have an empty array with guard reviews.count not equal to 0, else open and close curlies, and if this happens, we'll just return the string hyphen dot hyphen to indicate that there's no value in here for a rating. Otherwise, after the return curly, we'll calculate our average value. We'll say let average value equal to, and here we're going to perform an average calculation with a reduce higher order function by saying reviews, our reviews array, dot reduce, and remember from our earlier lesson what this does, it's going to go through every element of the reviews array one by one, and it's going to reduce this down to a single value. Now, how are we going to want to reduce this? Well, after reduce, we're going to say open and close parentheses passing in a 0. That means we're going to start out with the value 0. Now, we're going to sum up the values as we iterate through this array, so we start with 0, then we follow the parens with 2 curlies, and in between the curlies, we'll add $0 plus $1 dot rating. So that's going to take the current sum value, that's the $0, which starts out as the number 0, and we're going to add that $0 value, the continued sum, as we go through each element in the array with the latest value that we're iterating on. That's $1, so an element of the array, the next one in the order, dot rating, which means we take the rating property of that element and add it to our sum. We could have done this in a for loop, but it's nice to do it on one line. Now, one thing I'd also like to deal with is the fact that the rating is an integer value, and we want to provide a division in here and to get a fractional rating value. So we need to convert this value to a double. Pro tip, in Xcode, I can highlight the whole block of text that I want to put parentheses around, then type a single open parenthesis, and Xcode will put parens on both sides of the text that I've highlighted. Then I can just put the word double with a capital D in front of this. And I want to divide this value by reviews.count, but remember that value also needs to be converted to a double, so I'll also surround that with parens and put double out front. And at this point, we should have an average rating. Now, we can convert this to a string, but I also want to format this string to just one decimal point. Now, we discussed how to do this in an earlier app quite some time ago. We can say return capital S string because we're initializing a string here, and there are lots of different string initializers we can choose from. I'm going to select this option with format and argument parameters and press return. Now, the format is that rather obtuse string formatter, which looks really weird, but it's a standard that's used by many programming languages. So to format the string to just one decimal point, we'll enter the string between double quotes %, so that's actually going to format our argument, whatever number we pass in here, to 1 decimal places. So that's what the .1 stands for. The F stands for floating point, which is a numeric type that supports decimal points, very similar to the double, although Swift also supports floating point values too. Most programming languages don't have doubles though. That's why we have the F in here. This formatter was actually created before the Swift programming language was created. And then the argument that we're going to follow this with after the comma is just whatever value we want to convert using that string formatter. So that's going to be the average value constant that we created above. And now that we have this, let's head down to the text field that showed the literal string 4.5. I remember that I put in a to-do comment next to this, so I'll use the jump bar to jump to that to-do comment. And sure enough, I'm next to the text field that has the comment to-do change to computed property, so I can delete this comment, and I can change the 4.5 literal string in here to the computed property AVG rating. And we'll eventually see the live preview will show 2 hyphens separated by a dot since there aren't any reviews in the default live preview, but let's build and run. Hammer time. No errors. And we can look at various spots. Let's start with Pinot's. It has a rating of 4.0. Very nice. How about Shake Shack? 4.3. And El Pelon? 4.5. And if we take a look at a place with no reviews, like Dave's Hot Chicken, we see -spot-. Excellent work, Swifter. Hopefully you feel you've learned a lot in this lesson. And if you like this, why don't you use those YouTube review powers that you have to post a like, add a comment, tell your friends, classmates, and instructors if you're learning a lot. Some students at other universities have proposed following these videos as part of an independent study as well. My best to all the followers outside my university, and of course, my hard-working hackers at Boston College. Be sure to stay swifty. There's lots more to come.